Hi, hey, hello, I'm Chelsea. Welcome back to my channel where we talk books. So in my last video, I did all the books I read in 2024 so far, at least 6 months into the year. And I realized that there is a book tag, mid-year freak out book tag. And I did not do that. And there are questions that I think are interesting, but because I have already done like 6 months into the year books that I've read, I'm gonna keep this really short and answer the questions super speedy, because in my last video I just sort of gave you my like 5-star review, 2-star review, whatever it was, and moved on. So this will be a tiny bit more like in detail of my biggest disappointment, what my favorite book so far. My favorite book so far has changed since my last video, because earlier in the month I read a book that was 5 stars for me. So there's something new. So we'll get straight into it. First question is the best book that you've read this year. And like I said, it's changed since my last video, because I recently read White Oleander by Janet, God, what's her name? Can never fucking remember the names of these people. White Oleander by Janet Fitch. I read this one maybe like 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and I cannot stop thinking about it. I loved it so much. 100% so far this year, my favorite book. So White Oleander is about a young girl. It's the story of a young girl and her mother, and their very complicated relationship, because her mother ends up killing her boyfriend. Her mother's pretty crazy. Her mother's crazy, okay? Her mother is not all there. So her mother ends up killing her boyfriend and going to jail, leaving this young girl, Astrid, essentially parentless, and she ends up having to go into foster care. And it's her story. All her different, you see all the different foster families that she ends up going through, and it is such a beautiful story. I was captivated. I loved the character development of Astrid, because you see her from the ages of like, I think she was 10 or 11 when her mother went to jail, and then you see her until she's like 20, 21. So you really see how her relationship with her mother has really messed up her life, and being in the foster care system has changed her. It was probably one of the most beautifully written, beautifully told stories I've read all year. Next question is best series I've read this year. I am not a series girl. I don't have an answer to this question. I do not read series. Not at all. I've read Harry Potter and I've read The Hunger Games. That is where my series ends. So if you guys have any like series that are really good, can't put down, and maybe a recommendation for somebody who doesn't love book series, comment below, because I would love to know what some of your guys' favorite series are, because I don't really read them often. And my reason for that is that I get really tired of the main characters. I don't want to constantly be reading their stories, because I find that a lot of times in series, it's like you're repeating the same thing, and the characters are just, I just get tired of the character, because there's always one main character that you're following, and it's, even in Harry Potter, I was like, I hate you right now. So that is why I don't read a lot of series. So, but if you have any suggestions, please comment below. I would love to hear them. Next question is new releases of 2024 that are on my to-read list. The Women by Kristen Hanna is probably my #1 that I want to read this year. I don't know much about it. I have read 2 or 3 Kristen Hanna books in the past, and I've loved all of them. So I am really excited about The Women by Kristen Hanna. I don't know much about it. Let's just see what is it about, because I don't know actually. So it says, an intimate portrait of coming of age and a dangerous time and an epic tale of a nation divided. Women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frankie hears these words, it's revolution. Raised in the sun-drenched, idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. Women is the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. This is like got 4.65 stars on Goodreads, so I am really excited to read that one. Definitely my #1 new release that I want to read this year. Next up is biggest disappointment of the year. For me, it was definitely Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I don't understand people who say it's their favorite book. I didn't like it. I didn't get it. It was, I don't understand how it's considered like a sci-fi classic. It's a no from me. And that's where I'll leave that. I did not really like it. I didn't get it. And it's a no. It was disappointing though, because so many people, it's on so many people's lists of like the best books they've ever read, and not on mine. Biggest surprise of the year was definitely Funny Story by Emily Henry. I've talked about Emily Henry before, and she's I either hate it or I really like it. So I've read 2 of her books that I've really liked, and I've read 2 of her books that I have pretty much hated. So Funny Story was the most surprising book of the year for me so far. And essentially it's about a young woman who has recently broken up with her fiance, and she ends up being kind of lost. And so she moves in with the man who's recently broken up with his girlfriend because her fiance cheated on her with his girlfriend, and they form a friendship, a relationship, and they're roommates. I don't know, I loved their dynamic. I wasn't annoyed at the characters, and I really enjoyed the story, although I didn't really find it funny, but that's okay. It was yeah, it was a surprisingly good book for me. Next question is new favorite author. I'm gonna have to say Jane Austen. I loved the writing in Pride and Prejudice. I loved the story of Pride and Prejudice. Are we surprised because she's such a like well-known classic writer? Not really, but also kinda. So yeah, Jane Austen, probably one of my favorite authors I've read this year so far. And then obviously also Janet Finch, because I loved White Oleander. I haven't looked up any of her other books yet, but I would definitely be willing to read some of them and see if I like them as much as I liked White Oleander. Book that made me cry. I have not cried. I have not had a good cry in 2024 from a book. Okay, there's been tears, but not from a book. So I'll just say the last book that I read that made me cry, which is gonna be no surprise to anybody, but it was A Little Life by Hannah Yanagihara. I mean, need I say more, really? I did a whole video on it. I didn't bawl my eyes out like a lot of other people did, but the last chapter, there was at least a few tears shed, okay? I wasn't bawling, but that was the last book that made me cry. I read that in December though, but like, that was the last book that made me cry, so we'll just leave it at that. Book that I read that made me happy was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. The entire time I listened to this book on audio, I just had a huge smile on my face. Everything that happened, there was nothing like sad, nothing depressing. It was just like happy. And their relationship, the relationship between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet just made me so giddy. And yeah, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen was the book that made me happy. Next question, most beautiful book that I've bought or received this year so far. I don't know if I can answer that. I'm not really sure if it's like beautiful as in terms of like the cover is gorgeous, or beautiful in terms of the writing. I don't know that I have an answer to this question yet, but maybe my end of the year video I'll have an answer. Next question is books that you really want to read by the end of the year. There are a lot on this list of books that I really want to read by the end of the year, so I don't know that I'm going to go into all of them. I want this to be a relatively short video, but these are ones that I haven't discussed yet. So they are mostly books that I have had on my TBR for at least a year. So obviously The Women by Kristen Hanna is on this list, so we're not going to get into that. But I also really want to read Notes on an Execution by Dania Kakafka. I have heard so many good things about this book. So it's a work of literary suspense that deconstructs the story of a serial killer on death row, told primarily through the eyes of the women in his life. Like, oh, I love a good serial killer story. I really do. It's gotten like really great reviews, so I'm excited about that one. The other book that I really want to read this year is called the other book that I really want to get to this year is called Demon Copperhead. Demon Copperhead, I think is how you pronounce it, by Barbara Kingsolver. This is a David Copperfield retelling. David Copperfield, a story from Charles Dickens. It's a retelling of that story. And I have not read David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I don't think I need to, like, whatever. But the story sounds really interesting, although it's a very long book, which is probably why I haven't gotten to it yet. But I will try. This year, I really want to. So it says, it's the story of a boy born to a teenage single mother, and in a plot that never pauses for breath, relayed in his own unsparing voice, he braves the modern perils of foster care, child labor, schools, athletic success, addiction, disastrous loves, and crushing losses. Yeah, again, I don't know much about David Copperfield, but I have seen the movie. There's a movie out there somewhere with someone in it, and I've seen that forever ago, and I know this book is going to be depressing, but I have heard really good things about this book, and I'm excited to read it. And that's it. That's the mid-year freak out book tag. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed and liked this video, please consider subscribing. And until next time, bye!